Although I'm noticing the bits I've just shaded you can't actually see when it's on the car. But anyway, just because you can't see it doesn't mean you shouldn't paint it. Right then, so you've had a little look at the car. The gold colour scheme is pretty good. I used layers of different reds, and I also made some of them a bit more transparent so you can see through them. Now if you look at the bumper, it looks red, and there is in fact a red vinyl covering it, but in the sunlight outside, because it's quite transparent, that bit there where the exhausts are shines gold, and it looks really good. Add that to the gold spoiler, the gold sections on the side and the bonnet, and it adds to a nice effect. Right, so we're going to work on his face now, because I'll be able to, you guys will be able to see an actual proper transformation. What I'm going to do is highlight this section though and group it so it's just a bit easier to manage for when I'm going back through and putting things behind other things. So how I'm doing that is by pressing the right trigger, and that highlights the layer, and then pressing up or down, and that then groups, highlights all them, which you can then group into one piece, and now it's a lot easier to manage. So we're going to go for what shape we're going to use first. I'm just looking at what we need. We're going to go for my usual one. Now I've just used the bumper buttons to come through to the gradient shapes. Now that is the colour I would use, the shape I would use if I wanted a really dark section, really black. But for more gradient shapes, anything else, I will use this one here at the bottom. Sorry, I was just reading what Ice Rabbit said there. Right, so what I'm going to do is, obviously putting this on his face is going to ruin the picture. And you can see that it would affect his eyes as well. Now his eyes aren't blue like you would expect from the other ones, but they are bright white, and you can see there putting that on top doesn't make them white. So I'm going to cut that from there using X, and I'm going to use down to skip right back through all my paint, all my vinyls, and I'm going to go to the head. Behind the eyes I'm going to put the shading down. You see how that is now behind his eyes but still on top of his face. So we're going to shrink that right down. And my advice would be to build from the smaller bits up, so it actually goes out in like circles. So there's a straight line here, but then behind that it expands out like that, and then again like that. Now obviously you can see that that's made the first one too dark. So what I would do is really reduce that shading, because again, as you put over more layers over the top, it's gonna appear darker, because each layer will add another layer of colour on the top. How is iced out? So there's a small section of shadow that runs down from his eye, a slight angle, and that's going to help create that effect of just again reduce the transparency. So I want it to look quite natural, reflective. It is luck. A lot of it is luck, in the fact that by trying to recreate what I can see, I'm hoping for the same effect. It doesn't always work out like that though. Hiya man, see you later man, thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you liked the Hulkbuster armor. Has anybody seen the Avengers film yet? Just while I repeat the same process, I'm just putting in some basic shapes for the dark sections on his face. And there is a small light section right at the end, so I'm going to try and make sure I don't cover it up. Well, for those of you who haven't seen it, it is good. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it. Now as you can see, I put one quite transparent 51 layer over the top, and that's already, in my opinion, added to what I've already done. So I'm just sorting out which way is the right way to move that. I'm going to make it black so that I can see it a bit better. And I want it about there, but I want it right down again. 51 it was at, wasn't it guys? Yeah, it does cost way too much. I took myself, my wife and my 2 kids. There's a small bit of shadow poking around the back. I've said it before, some of you guys won't have heard it. The way I do it is try and capture the realism is painting what I see. Paint what you see is the best advice I can give you. If you want it to look good, not good, but realistic like this, then the best way to do it is take everything literally and paint exactly what you see. So if you see a little slight shadow bit coming around here, then paint it. Because as long as you've got enough layers, you're only adding to your paint. You're not going to make it worse. If it doesn't look good, just get rid of it. The next bit rather. But quite often you'll find that your paints won't look good until they're nearly finished. So another piece of advice from me would be keep going. Stick at it until it's done. Because you'll never know, one piece might suddenly transform the way you see the whole thing. It does work like that sometimes. There's a little lip on the underside of his helmet here, and I'm just trying to recreate that. The way you recreate that is putting a dark section underneath it and then a lighter section above it, and that helps give the appearance of there being a ridge there, which will give you the right effect. So just a small bit here that's a bit too bright. But I don't want the shading to come over too much into the red, so I've just put a really small bit there. I'm going to extend it out here, make it a bit longer, increase the transparency a bit thinner. That's the wrong way. And I'm going to use that as a shadow for underneath his mouth. Crane, Norcott, thanks very much for the compliment. Hopefully it'll look even better when it's finished. So I'm going to reduce, I want a bit here that's lighter than the dark stripe up the center, but still shaded, and I want it either side. And sometimes you'll be tempted to use one big piece to do an area, but when you do that you tend to lose focus. It tends to look like you've lost focus on the image. It's much, I would always advise painting in smaller pieces rather than bigger pieces to to try and maintain, you know, the small bits of detail rather than just putting a big shape over the top of it. Well, I'll take a break in about 20 minutes or so, and then I'll while I'm doing that, I'll display some of my other cars, so you guys can have something to look at while I go a cig break and a toilet break and that. And we'll get back to painting. I don't know how long I'm going to be on tonight, probably till about 12 o'clock. But if I'm almost done on the mask and it's a bit after 12, then I'll keep at it until it's finished. Because I would like to get the mask finished tonight, just so you guys can see what I'm trying to achieve and see it come to life, basically. Hopefully. Another thing that I would mention is that quite often when you do something like this where I'm painting the whole mask but I'm not painting anything else, it won't look as good until the bit next to it is also painted to the same level. Which is why I just added a little bit of shadow to the ends of his mask on the red. So now that I've done that, I'm going to take that shape and I'm going to put it on top of the eyes, and I'll change that to white and reduce the size down, and I'm going to increase the transparency to full just to see how that looks. Might be a bit too bright, it might not be, we'll see how it looks. I think that looks okay like that, especially when you put into context with the yellows and stuff that I'm going to have to add. I'm just trying to see where that light falls, just there. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of layers. We'll be looking at about 2,000 layers by the time I'm finished, at least. So now that I've added the white, I'm going to go back to underneath the eyes. I'm going to change this to a slight off yellow colour. So we'll go with a yellow, make that, we'll take some of the colour out of it, and then we'll reduce, just put a bit more black into it, maybe a tiny touch more yellow. What I'm going to do with this, put this like that. Now you can see there that that looks pants. You have to blend it in to make it look natural. And it's all these little layers that are going to help bring your picture to life, whether you're building a small logo or a big piece like this. And one of the things I learned from quite early on is that attention to detail is the key to having something look good. Again, whether that's a logo or a big massive piece like this, if you're doing it approximately, it's never going to look as good as if you're working from a piece accurately. So I'm using the exact same method as I did with the dark work, the shadows. I'm doing that with a white shape for the highlights, and I'm also using it really faintly at the moment, although I'm going to increase the brightness for up here on his head. But the fainter you use it, the better it blends, basically. It might cost you a few more layers in emphasizing the colour, but being gentle pays off, if that makes sense, with your shading. Although that looks pretty good there. It's another thing about painting. Don't listen to what anybody says, because what works for you works for you.